So obviously this is a fun time where we can start making moves and getting ready to improve the roster. And as you all know, there's a lot going on that obviously I can't talk about, right? Which makes this a really awkward time as well. But the great thing is the staff has come together from the last time that I spoke to everyone. We made the hires. I've been really impressed and spent time with all the coaches. And, you know, everything that Matt and I spoke about before in terms of finding talented teachers that have emotional intelligence, that care about the players, that bring energy, and also a developmental mindset, that's there. And you can tell already we're excited for that. You know, the other piece is in the performance area. We've made a lot of changes there, and we're confident that we're going to be able to take our players and really optimize their ability so they're in shape, they're playing fast, they're playing violent, and they're explosive. And part of that is making sure the body's right. And that group is already getting to work. Some of the guys have been coming in, working out, and it seems like more and more have come through to get ready. So I'm excited about that as well. And then in terms of the front office, we've spent a lot of time meeting. We were behind for about 2 weeks, and we've been able to catch up and go through the free agent process. That took about 8 to 9 days, and then we put we flew our college guys in, and we watched a ton of tape, and we went through that process and kind of got what I call the board pinned down, because we're still gathering information, but at the same time we want to get some of those players in the right area and not be too affected on what goes down here, because as we get further and further away from the season, you can make some mistakes by what happens in shorts and the all-star games, and really you forget about the meat of the evaluation, which came from the season and the information our guys were able to gather. So I'm excited. We're heading in the right direction. I got a really good group in staff. A lot of you have probably, read up on Ian. He's been a huge part for me, only because getting pulled in so many different directions, that's very new to me. Having him out in front and working with our staff, if I get pulled out of a meeting, he keeps the ball rolling, keeps a list of players that I need to get caught up on. But all systems are always moving, and we don't get stalled out for all the things that are going on. So I'm excited. We got everything rolling.
And generally speaking, you talked in free agency about being a proponent of the second and third waves and being able to strike there.
Yep.
I'm curious philosophically with the first wave, when in your eyes does it make sense to strike there, and what things need to line up?
Yeah. So you'll start to gather that information just with contacts into that first wave, and you'll get a feel based on how you valued players once they start to trickle down and the price points come down a little bit. Because at the end of the day, you're going to overpay in free agency. That's just what it is. It's market price. So it's really through the communication that you'll get an idea of when things settle down a little bit. But it's usually a couple days in.
And when you talk about being a fan of second and third waves, how much of that is volume and being able to get more players in that regard?
Yeah, that's a big deal. I mean, we have, 26, 27 free agents, so there's a lot of spots we got to fill. So that volume piece is important, and it really comes down to our evaluation to make sure that we're right on there. And the other thing, too, that I've always loved is usually in that volume piece, you're going to have some players that they're motivated. They got a chip on their shoulder, and they want to get back to free agency and go at it again, so they play with a purpose. And I've mentioned this before, but it's very hard to stay super motivated. You got to be a special human being to be in that first wave and keep going. You want your name etched in the stadium. That's what kind of mentality you got to have. So I definitely think there's a lot of good value down there. Plus, like I said, the mentality comes with it.
Brian, kind of going off that, how would you describe your comfort level in dealing with agents, being stopped in hallways and having these types of conversations about a lot of players?
Yeah. That's part of the business. I mean, everyone's been through that. But obviously, we can't really have too many conversations at this point.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and just in general,
Yeah.
Moving forward with the free agency process,
Yeah.
Really big things
Yep.
dealing with other executives, just your comfort level and being, the point of
Right.
contact for really everybody.
Yeah, again, I think it comes to just being a people person and a relationship guy, and I feel like I've had good relationships with a lot of those executives and agents along the way, just from different aspects. But for those that I don't know, I'm able to make contact and go from there. But it's not that much of a challenge for me.
Ryan, you guys are going to have a decision to make on Tariq Cohen at some point. How do you evaluate him medically as we sit here right now?
Yeah, it just comes down to that communication and conversations with Andre Tucker's, one of the best in the league. And we're just going to have those conversations to see where everything stands and make the best decision we can make at that time.
Is he healthy now?
I really don't want to get into the medical piece of individual players, but we'll just take it a day at a time to figure out where he's at for us.
As you've looked at the roster, have you had a better grasp on like the shape of the team that you're inheriting and pinpointing what your greatest needs are and what you're looking for when you come to this place and into free agency?
Yeah, there's some really good players. In the press conference we talked about Justin, we talked about Roquan. Those guys are talented players, and we're excited to get our hands on them and see where their ceiling is. And really, again, with all of the free agents that we have this year, there's a lot of needs in every place. And it's not just starters, but it's depth. And we all know when you go through a whole season, a lot of times that starting 11, 22 is not going to be the group that you finish the season with. So it's important for us to really make sure that our depth is taken care of as well.
Ryan, with the wide receiver position, obviously Tyreek, a bit of a unicorn in the way that he is.
Yeah.
You can't just go find a Tyreek Hill. But how has your experience with him and then just the receivers you had in Kansas City kind of shaped the way you look at wide receivers both in free agency and the draft in terms of what you're looking for?
Yeah, I think they come in different shapes and sizes and speeds. I think it comes down to playmakers. I think we saw that in the Super Bowl. Guys that can make plays when their number's called. And that's what we look for. And you can see that on college tape. And then I will say one of the benefits of the combine is you get to see some of the physical traits as well. What sets them apart? Is it size? Is it length? Is it explosion? Is it speed? So we'll put all that together. But I would say that boils down just to being a playmaker.
When you looked at the tape from this past season of your offensive line, the players you have under contract, how do you evaluate that group that you've got in the building right now?
Yeah. We're going to change it up a little bit just in terms of the style. So a lot of those guys, and the message has been pretty clear, we got to change body types a little bit. We got to get lighter. We got to get quicker. And through that, I think there's some young talent that just needs to be pressed, and that's part of our job is to create competition and bring the best out of them. So I think we'll do that, and we'll see how if the cream rises to the top, and especially with the O-line play, a lot of times, and I don't want to speak for the coaches, but it's going to end up being the best five to roll out there.
Ideally, where does Tevin Jenkins line up for you when you guys get on the field?
It's too early right now. When we get back, we'll get organized. I think we put out the mini camp, the extra mini camp that we get in April. So we got some time to figure that out. But when we do, we'll move those guys around and see where they fit the best.
Right. A lot of folks don't understand in this first year as a GM, like you said, a lot of the important scouting work was done in season as college kids were playing. You can't just come in and bring your whole scouting department with you. You're hearing a lot of Ryan Pace's work, or his group's work, I should say. How challenging is that? And then do you, following this draft, then reevaluate and kind of rebuild that department too?
Yeah, well, first, I've been through change before in Kansas City. So I've been through that process of adjusting grade scales and values and how people communicate and the type of reports that have been submitted and how they've gone through all-star games. So I feel like I adapt really well. I will say this. I was very happy with the group of scouts that we have right now. The meetings were incredible, and before we broke, I told them all how proud I was. Because as a new GM, you come in and you're like, all right, you're evaluating them, you're evaluating the evaluators. And at the end of it, the thing that stood out to me is there's a group of really, really good people that worked really hard this fall to gather the information. Now, my style was a little bit different. Our meeting structure was different where, as I said in the press conference, it was a culture of candor. It's open. We watch tape. We have order in the way that we watch the tape. But after that, everyone can speak their mind. And if I see something different than you, then I bring it up to the room and we work through it. And you can tell me where you saw it different and we'll go find it. So that group effort, I think, was refreshing to everyone. And again, I can't speak more highly of the group that we had in the room. I'm excited, and we'll continue to evaluate. But I was pumped about that.
Ryan, you talked after you were hired about your desire to raise the standard. I'm
Yep.
curious specifically what that means to you and how far-reaching it has to be throughout the organization for you to get done what you want to do.
Yeah. In terms of scouting or
Everything.
Everything?
I mean, you brought it
Yeah.
up multiple times about raising a bar and setting a new standard.
yeah, it's doing things the right way, which oftentimes are hard. It's hard to do things the right way. I talked about putting the performance team together. We're going to take body fat and weight really, really, really serious, and it's going to be held to a certain standard because we know if we get guys to follow that, and once they see that, they're going to perform better, they're going to play better for us as a team, and they're going to be more successful as an individual, and eventually we hope then you take your hands off and the accountability becomes within the locker room. So I think that's big with the players. In terms of the scouting, it comes to character gathering, information gathering on the players that we're looking at. We need to know everything so that we're prepared when those players come into the building. We can make sure they're taught the right way, the nutrition is set up the right way. Our coaches are aware of how they learn best. So again, it just comes down to really setting in stone what we want and then following through on that.
Ryan, in Kansas City, you guys had some drafts where you didn't have a ton of picks. Obviously, going into this one, you guys only have 5 to go in, no first-round pick. How does that change or affect the way you approach a draft? When you don't have the first-round pick, you don't have a ton of picks going in.
Yeah, I don't think it changes much. Obviously, you want a lot of picks, but that's just, the hand we were dealt. And we'll be open-minded on how we can create more picks. And we'll be smart about that. It just really changes the focus a little bit of maximizing, like I said, that second, third wave of free agency and making sure that we get the right type of players in. Because I don't want to get away from, you talk about a standard, I don't want to get away from bringing the right type of players in and really setting that culture and making sure the core is strong and guys are motivated, they're playing hard, but they're playing together. And I feel like if we can start that and then bring in that talent, if it's 5 picks, 6 picks, whatever it might be, then I think we can start to build from there.
At your first press conference, you talked about putting like a stamp, a Bears stamp. This is what I want in a
Yeah.
Bears player.
Yep.
I'm assuming that you're going to be looking free agency the same way. How would you kind of characterize the trait, the couple traits that you're looking for as a Bears player?
Yeah, it's guys that are passionate about football. They're about the team. They want to win. They're motivated. They have a purpose. They're tough. They're physical. All of those things that we're looking for, and we've already started that. And you're right. We've tagged the guys. A lot of them are here on the college draft board, but also that going back to just making sure we do a good job gathering information. You only have five picks, but those evaluations end up going all over the league, but they come back to you in free agency. So if you've identified those with Bears fits, even years now, and then that shows up years from now, that sticks with you. And obviously through the seasons and watching football and talking and gathering information, you'll know if that Bears fit truly stayed with them all the way through.
Right, when you have a young quarterback that you believe in, especially kind of the rookie deal, how does that affect your approach heading into the off-season plan, the player acquisition period, when you have this opportunity with Justin right now on his contract?
Yeah, I think it just gives you the ability to do more to help build the entire roster. The other thing is just always keeping in mind guys that can help him and how he can help them as well, but it's the support for that player. What does he play well with? What does the offense need for him to perform well? And also looking at historical information of what has helped second-year quarterbacks be successful as well. So all of that comes into play.
Ryan,
Ryan,
back to
somebody
receiver.
talked to you, you hadn't quite had the time to deep dive into what was already in Chicago, like on the roster.
Yeah.
I guess specifically with the offense, what did you see? I mean, were there areas where you were pleasantly surprised? Were you disappointed? Did you feel like there's more holes than you thought? What was your evaluation of all that?
Yeah, I mean, bright spot was Mooney, and then just as guys have come in to work out, we've had the opportunity just to introduce each other, and he stopped in, and I was like really blown away by the person. So that was a bright spot. The running back situation's good. There's good offensive linemen as well. It's just continuing to tweak that and making sure we get everyone that's fit and in the right spots. So that was a pleasant surprise.
On that note of receivers, with Allen Robinson
Chicago, whether it's somewhere else, with free agency coming up, how do you go about potentially repairing that relationship? I know he's voiced some frustrations with like the older team. Like, how coming in do you prioritize doing that these next couple weeks?
Yeah, I think it's communication. It's, establishing that, things are going to be a little bit different. And that's a tough one to answer specifically, but I think it's more of a fresh start for everyone. I think through our moves and the staff we put together, I think it shows that.
Is it safe to presume he's not going to be back the second time?
I'm not there right now, so we're just going to keep working through that.
Ron, have you had any further evaluation of Justin Fields, been able to watch tape, further evaluation of what you like about him on the field?
Yeah, that evaluation really, I spent enough time with him watching the tape that hasn't really changed from the press conference, other than, again, meeting him in person. And I think there's something about the guy that's the stoic kind of feel you get from him, and serious and locked in and focused, and he's ready to go. So I think there's a high ceiling, and again, it's just putting him in position to succeed and seeing how high that ceiling is. And our coaches are excited about him too, which is really cool.
Have you looked at things and said, this is where I can put him in a better position to succeed, as you mentioned a couple of times? Like, you see places where you're like, this is what we got to do with him.
Yeah, and you can see it through different flashes of tape. I think there was a couple plays in like the San Francisco game, him moving out of the pocket and throwing with control and his bases set. So a lot of it's fundamental too. But then just allowing him to make those throws that he's really good at. And then, like I mentioned before, it's just wherever he has struggled, it's just cleaning that area up, and we'll see if we can close the gap and get him to a place where, we can win a lot of football games.
Just to follow up on that, you talked about supporting him with O-line help and adding talent to the skills position. I'm curious what your immediate goals are for those two things, and how you sort of set a realistic bar for the first cycle, right, of going through and replenishing that.
Yeah, it's just finding players that fit our scheme, that allow us to be balanced. I think that's important. And then, as I mentioned before, just the playmaker piece. Guys that can make plays. So I think a lot of the really good quarterbacks, especially the young ones, when things go crazy, who can they go to that they trust and that's dependable, that can make plays? So we're just trying to keep an eye on that as well.
And then just following up to what you said about Darnell, what was it about your interaction with him that struck you?
Just he's got a quiet confidence about him, and he's hungry to be special. I'm always looking for guys that, like, they just keep raising their own bar in terms of where they want to go. And he wants to be special, and you can feel that in him. And I think we've all been around people that, like, they want to be the absolute best that they can be, and it's contagious, and it gives you energy. It gives you hope that, really, and it shows me we got to keep getting guys like that and keep adding them to the roster, because if everyone has that mentality and they start pushing each other, then all of a sudden the team starts to raise the bar and the standard, and then it's wins, and it's the division, and then it's going for championships.
Did you
Right.
look at
We got time for a couple more, guys.
Did you look at Mooney at all last year in the draft, like in your own evaluations? And I guess, why do you think he kind of did better than where he ended up? Right, to give you, I guess that was, yeah.
It's hard to answer that.
Yeah.
It's hard to answer that. But again, I think it's his mindset that he came in here and attacked the process and didn't care where he came from or where he was drafted, and just played ball, and we saw that he's got a lot of talent.
Ryan, you mentioned when you talk about a fresh start for everybody for the roster, is it easier for you to evaluate with calculation a roster that you don't have any attachment to? You didn't develop these guys, you didn't invest draft capital. Is it easier for you to just look at it with clear eyes when you don't have prior attachment to anybody on this roster?
Yeah, I would say that's probably true. You see it for what it is, and some of the biases and some of the opinions from the past don't water down your evaluations, and you see it for what the tape is telling you.
Ryan, you mentioned taking a historical look at how second-year quarterbacks have been helped in the offseason. What did you guys find when you took a look at that?
It's the dependability piece. It's, sometimes it can be a slot receiver, sometimes it can be, a second tight end, sometimes it's a big outside. There's a relationship piece that they can go to, that they trust, that they work with all off season, that they get that connection with, that allows them, it's almost like they get battled out with that guy. And I think it's important.
Are there specific guys you can tell us about, just when you looked at other teams over the years, who were that dependability piece?
Not specifically, no.
Brian, when you talked to Matty was about his defense, and you think about skill sets that he likes for different spots. What's that give and take like as you enter this player acquisition period with terms of what you look for in players and then matching them up with what he wants for his defense?
Yeah, it's aligned, and everything he said in his presser is exactly the way that he wants it, and you can see that from where he came from. But it's fast, physical. It's guys that attack, relentless, that have endurance, that can do it for a long period of time. So, and that's pretty easy to see on tape. Not that there's a ton of them everywhere, but those guys stand out because they play with a different mindset.
Can you learn anything in the interview process with some of these guys that can tell you a little more about that, whether it's passion for football, things like that?
Yeah.
Are those things you look for this week when you're interviewing prospects?
Yeah, and you get a feel for the person, and there's almost like when I said I met Mooney, like there's guys that when they sit down, they have just a different way about them and the way they describe how they play and why they play the game, what motivates them. So that's what I'm looking for, is that substance behind the player of like, why do I do something really hard every day? Why do I practice hard? Why do I want to be special? Because that's what sets a lot of these players apart. They don't just go play, they have intent on why they play the game.
Thanks, guys.